Hello and good morning. Joe Justice here, coming to you live on what is today? It is March 1st. Can you believe it? And it is a beautiful day here in Charleston. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but in Charleston, West Virginia, it looks like it's going to be 70 degrees. It's going to be nice and sunny. It looks like spring is here a little early, but just as I say that, I guarantee the winter weather is going to come rolling in. So I'm just going to be quiet and I'm not going to mention that again. Today, we have an awesome guest with us as we begin to prepare for next weekend. That's next Saturday, and he'll talk a little bit more about dates and locations and all that kind of stuff. We are going to be sponsoring the 5th Raspberry Jam here in Charleston. And you're probably wondering what Advantage Technology has to do with jellies and jams and canning foods and all that kind of stuff, but that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about the Raspberry Pi, which is a computing device, and we are talking about IoT and how to manage that and educating children and all of the things that are involved with some exciting IT stuff going on in the Valley with events and everything happening. So my head's going to explode talking about all this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Brett White. And Brett, could you just break down for us a little bit what is the Raspberry Jam?
Super. So the Raspberry Jam was originally developed as an event around the Raspberry Pi, the $35 computer the size of a credit card. And it's a really easy way to get started into computer science, whether it's in the programming field, networking, IT engineering, development, or anything of the sort. It's a great test bed for any sort of computer science field, and that was the Raspberry Pi Foundation's first and foremost mission for building the Raspberry Pi: make computing accessible to the masses and make it easier to learn how to do computing style, no matter what type of industry that you go towards.
And the Raspberry Pi, it's actually been around for quite a while, hasn't it?
Yes, it was invented in 2012. The Raspberry Pi 1 was the first Raspberry Pi that I got. It was in like 2013, and I turned it into a mini radio station. That was the moment that I started doing coding, believe it or not.
A radio station. How old were you when you created that, Brett?
I was still in high school. I was a sophomore in high school when I got the first Raspberry Pi.
That's so cool. When I was in high school, they had the 386 computers had just come out, and that was like mind-blowing speed. And it's so funny because the Raspberry Pi was what, $35 when it first came out?
Yeah,
And probably a
absolutely.
gazillion times faster than the 386.
Yeah, it's definitely up there in speed. Even the first version still had a half a megabyte of RAM, or half a gigabyte. Sorry, it had half a gigabyte of RAM starting out. So it was a small computing unit at the time, but it was still faster than what you had back in high school.
So how do we get from the Raspberry Pi, the device, to the Raspberry? And by the way, it's Pi as in Pi, right? As in the number
Correct.
pi, right? So there's
Correct.
all these. You'll find out whenever you're talking about the Raspberry Pi, there's all kinds of little jokes and Easter eggs and nuggets that go around all this kind of stuff that people just kind of throw around. But can you tell me, Brett, how do we get from the Raspberry Pi, which is a computing device, to the Raspberry Jam, which is a conference that we're having next week? And can you tell us the dates and the time so that everybody knows?
Absolutely. The Raspberry Jam, the fifth annual Raspberry Jam, will be at the University of Charleston's Clay Tower building. It'll be on March 11th, 2023. It'll be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. You don't have to be there the entire time. You can just come on in, check it out. It's free to join. It's free to be there because we're trying to build a community and also open the world of computer science education to the masses.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is not just for old time programmers. This isn't just for people in the industry. This is for kids. This is for hobbyists. This is for anybody interested in, I guess, what you would call IoT or Internet of Things. Is that right?
It is for anybody that's interested in the computer science field, whether you want to pursue a career in information technology, just like how Advantage specializes in. You want to specialize in software engineering for things like Salesforce, or if you want to do your own, or you want to do web development, the sky's the and IoT, Internet of Things. That's actually my specialty. What I teach at University of Charleston. Um, that whatever your case may be in the computer science industry, there's going to be a niche that this Raspberry Pi could either fill or at least start you off on the right track. Whether you are brand new to computer science or whether you have been in the field for quite a while and you want to start learning about new parts of the computer science industry that you may have never touched before. Because I know a lot of people in the IT industry that they're like, oh yeah, I think I want to go for like WordPress development. Start small on website development. You can host WordPress. You could even start an IoT, make an automated a stoplight, which is one of our little classes that we have at the jam, which can be ran off a Raspberry Pi. The sky's the limit when it comes to this because it's the perfect launch pad to learn how to do any sort of computing in general. It's a good general computer. You can even replace this with an actual computer. This can be run as an actual computer with keyboard, mouse, and everything. Albeit it's slower than today's standard, but it's still pretty good for what you get. Plus, you get to learn the Linux operating system, which is used in many industries and many companies today for server gear.
And I know I've read a little bit about the Raspberry Pi. Of course, I'm familiar with the platform, but I mean, I've read from a lot of people that this is their first introduction to Linux. This is their first introduction to Python. This is their first introduction to Internet of Things. This is their first introduction. I remember when I was younger, we had different computer systems. Of course, you had the Commodore 64, you had all the different Apple models, but people forget that those started out as kits. You would put them together. That's how you learned about computing. That's how you learned about computers. Now you go and you pick up a tablet, which is a gazillion times more powerful, and there's all the but a kid can't take that apart. A kid can't understand how the screen works. A kid can't understand how swapping out the CPU is going to make a difference, things like that. But you can learn stuff like that with a Raspberry Pi, right?
To a degree, there is actually a specialized kit that I'm looking to get probably in next year's jam. Stay tuned. So the idea is that there is a kit that you can use with the Raspberry Pi that includes a monitor, keyboard, the whole kit, the whole spiel. The idea is that the original kit they have come with this case with a fan on it and things like that. But there's also pieces of the kit that you can include for basically you can build your own laptop using Raspberry Pi. A company back in I don't know if they still are operating to this day. They're called Kano. So they specifically did like build your own laptop kits, and they're really neat. You can build your own laptop using the Raspberry Pi and learn how to get a monitor connected, even at a basic level. A monitor, like the camera kit, or even the main part, the speakers, everything else that's included to make a laptop. Because this is a great test bed. Sure, you can't change the CPU on it or the RAM, but it's still a fantastic way to get your feet wet without worrying about breaking anything. It's made to be more modularized and easier to run.
Right. And I understand that, there are limitations to what you can actually create using like a Raspberry Pi, but understanding all the concepts and the components that you get, and, you add on to it things like the Arduino that you could add to a Raspberry Pi and stuff like that. And you can really get kind of an introduction to how computer systems work, how IoT works, how programming works, how the electricity is transformed, what kind of adapters and things you need. You can kind of really understand that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of pieces that you can learn from this, especially in the IoT sphere. Like just around my desk in general is like you can build using the Raspberry Pi Pico, which is the Raspberry Pi's answer to the Arduino Uno. You can make things like keyboards. This is a giant key switch that I just happen to have. You can even learn how Wi-Fi devices work because there's a version of the Raspberry Pi Pico. It can show you how to do stuff like Wi-Fi plugs. You can make your own Wi-Fi devices around your house and make it local so that you don't need to rely on the internet connection because there's a certain ISP that likes to cut people off around here. But it's still really nice to have to learn how to make your own local devices that don't rely on the internet.
Awesome. Well, Brett, I want to thank you so much. As a reminder to everybody who's watching, The Raspberry Jam, the Raspberry Jam, the 5th annual, is coming up on Saturday, March 11th. That's going to be at UC, the University of Charleston, right here in Charleston, West Virginia. It's going to be all day long, and we're going to have all kinds of things. I've got a link in the description that has all of the details, and you can register to get your tickets right there. You can also visit the Eventbrite page directly there. If you're watching this video and you know anybody that might be interested, anybody that has kids, anybody that's, maybe in high school or in college that's looking to learn more about computer science, especially high schoolers will get a lot out of this if they're looking to see what's available in computer science and what to do in the computer science field. Tag your friends, let them know, share it, send it to them in Messenger, text them, do whatever it takes. We want to get the word out. We want to have a huge attendance. Go ahead and register so that Brett has a little bit of information. He told me beforehand that it's okay if everyone just shows up and registers day of, but try to go ahead and register online so that he gets kind of a good idea of how many people are going to be there. So, Brett, I want to thank you so much for being on with us today. That's all the time we have. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys then. Have a great day. Have a wonderful day today because it's Wednesday, it's hump day, and it's beautiful weather. Bye-bye for now.